Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, our favorite talk show host here. Good to see you.
How are you, Dr. Paul?
Well, very good.
Good.
We're going to have a busy schedule. We're going to try to cover more than one thing.
Ooh, yeah. I can take a deep breath.
Maybe two littles and one big one.
Yeah.
Well, the one that we consider a little bit larger is we want to talk about the settlement, the rules being changed, the settlements with Israel and the Palestinians. Mm-hmm. That's been a contentious issue for our administration, for Israel, and people sorting it out ever since 1947.
Yeah.
We want to talk about that, but also we want to mention something, about the Patriot Act that nobody else is mentioning, as well as calling attention to a little clip of news that we think is important. That has to do with Julian Assange.
Yeah.
But why don't we start off with the Patriot Act? There's going to be a renewal, but it's not in the news. And our point is, why isn't it in the news? And why is everybody who's protecting our civil liberties and our constitutional rights and all these things, all this mouthing off in these hearings and how dedicated they are to the great American experiment? At the same time, when they continue to do the same thing to the American people, there seems to be very little interest. And what is it coming up now? There's going to be a renewal, and they're manipulating it through the appropriations process. That's generally the way they do things so that they don't have to have a debate on it.
Yeah, for this one, we thank Thomas Massey, our friend from Kentucky, the best member of Congress of the House. But he posts on his Facebook today, while everyone's distracted by the impeachment drama, Congress is sneaking the language into page 25 of a continuing resolution extending those provisions of the Patriot Act that's supposed to expire in December, extending those to March of 2020. They're trying to suspend the rule and do that, sneak it under the radar while everyone's not paying attention. They don't want to have a debate on this. Neither side does. This goes along with what you always say about on the big things, while they're all together. Here's what Representative Massey said, if I can just read this sentence, because this captures it in a nutshell. He said, "The scam here is that Democrats are alleging abuse of presidential power while simultaneously reauthorizing warrantless power to spy on citizens that no president should have, in a bill that continues to fund everything the president does and waiving their own rules to do it." So here they're saying that Trump abusing his power. Here, have some more power.
Well, in a way, I think it's even worse than that, because we're talking about the Patriot Act and they're slipping it in. We've been fighting that for a long time, and the establishment and the deep state loves it. But what about what was announced, and we made mention of it, but we haven't seen it in the news, is this new unit, the pre-crime unit that Bill Barr and Trump wants to set up.
Yeah.
That is, look at people's attitudes and habits and what they do, because they may be, suspect. They may someday commit a crime. They may be a terrorist for all we know. So therefore, we want the right to arrest them, to spy on them, to know everything about them, arrest them if necessary. And it falls into the category of a really embellished big red flag law. Red flag, we got to arrest them. They have to prove themselves innocent. But this one even sounds worse. But very little has been said about it, because it's just, I don't think they meant to have a big announcement of that. And we caught one report on that. But it sounds to me like they've started and they're working on it. It isn't like it's going to be brand new. Someday they might even consider asking the Congress about it. But then by that time, the Congress won't care, like they don't care about the Patriot Act.
And one of the categories that they're concerned about is if you're suspicious of government, and they're going to send over mental health professionals to help you. So all of our viewers out there, you're going to soon have your own government-appointed mental health professional to help you through this.
We have to change the name of our program. Well, anyway, let's talk about the Israeli settlement. Mm-hmm. That's been going on for a long time. Of course, the modern-day Israel was established in 1947 mm-hmm. under a UN resolution, and there's been fighting going on ever since. But then there was a war in '67, which essentially, made the Palestinian lands disappear. In 1949, there was a Fourth Geneva Conference that said that you're not allowed to, if you go and occupy them, you're not allowed to go any further. You shouldn't even do that, but you shouldn't go any further. You shouldn't be building homes on it. Yeah. But that's been going on, and there's essentially there is no Palestine. And I remember that coming up in the debates once. Well, are the Palestinians a people? And I thought, I didn't know they weren't a people, but I know there's a mess over there. And of course, I think foreign intervention is the main problem. I think when people of different religions and culture and they live close together, the more they're required to get along with each other, the better they do. And but when everybody, special interests from other countries get involved and international political bodies get involved, all of a sudden there's a lot more fighting going on. But anyway, this looks like it's accelerating right now. The Palestinians aren't going to be happy. And you know what? There's probably some Jews aren't going to be happy with this either, because they think that they should try to live with the Palestinians.
Remember our good friend Nassim Taleb, who said on our show a couple of years ago that if we had just stayed out of this business in the first place, they'd be getting along, mostly just fine and trading like they had done for a long time. Right. But we're talking about it today because Mike Pompeo has come down from on high and given a new couple of tablets. He said, from now on, we're going to reverse course, and we're going to say that those settlements that the Israelis are building on Palestinian land are no longer illegal. They're legal now. They're legal under international law. He's speaking unilaterally for international law. And he said the previous American position of viewing the settlements as illegal did, quote, not advance peace. So by calling them legal and telling the Israelis to go ahead and take it all, that promotes peace.
Yeah, he made these comments, and that's supposed to reassure us. For some reason, he hasn't reassured me. Because he says now there are unique facts, which means that we're going to distort the truth, and therefore we have to change our position. And like you said, his argument is that the current situation doesn't promote peace, but if we change this and become more aggressive in settlements, that this will be a promotion to peace. And quite frankly, it's a mess. I don't think any one outsider or outside government or group of governments can handle this as well as the people who live there would be more or less pressured to solve their own problems, because I just think the last thing that we need is to be strongly on one side or the other. And that, of course, has been going on for a long time, and there's a lot of emotion packed in this, and there's a lot of political grandstanding on it, and it's sometimes the politicians don't even like to talk about this because they get painted in a certain way that isn't very flattering, and nobody likes that. But I just don't think this is a step, toward peace. I think step away rather than stepping into it is a move toward peace. So I think the limits that I think we have is that look at our own government's policy and critique it and give some some advice, if they want to call it advice, have a comment about a different way of handling this. But right now, this sounds like, it's going to be messier. Our president has his reasons for going in this direction. Iran is involved in this to some degree, as well as Saudi Arabia. And also Netanyahu has probably a position in this too, because he's a politician, and he's not exactly totally secure. So there's a lot of politics, involved here. And it's just that I wished it were easy to wave a wand and say, live in peace. It's not going to be that easy, but I think making a suggestion that it is possible, it's happened before, and maybe someday they'll decide that living in peace without outside interference and dictates from international bodies to come in and say, oh, well, we know what's best. We'll have the answer. You do it our way. I don't like that.
Yeah. Well, there's plenty of anti-Semitism out there, and it's reprehensible. There's no excuse for it. But criticizing U.S. policy toward Israel is not anti-Semitic. So that's just a fact. But there is a pattern of the Trump administration pandering to Netanyahu and interfering in internal Israeli politics on behalf of Netanyahu. And this is just yet another one. Moving the embassy to Jerusalem was a big handoff to Netanyahu. In March of 2019, the U.S. recognized the occupied Golan Heights as part of Israel. Here, have some land. That's a sop to Netanyahu. And this is yet a third one. Doing everything he can to get one party elected in Israel is certainly interference in their government, plus those few $billions a year that we send. But, we would argue that U.S. foreign policy should really serve the U.S. national interest. And if we're going to do something overseas, it should serve our interests. And I think the first indication that this latest move didn't help us at all is that the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem immediately issued a statement saying, okay, embassy personnel, don't go anywhere near Palestinian lands because we've really just royally irritated everyone and ticked everyone off.
And this is a brand new position for us, but they dance around some words telling why they can do this, but they never say, where does, Pompeo get this authority? All of a sudden he has this authority to do this, let alone deciding whether it's a good idea or not. Also, even if you went with strictly tradition of the last 50 years or so, it's generally been said that, even though the Palestinians didn't have control of their land, there were still some rules. You can't go too far. You can't decide that they're totally abolished. And this looks like it's going to that step. And yet Republicans and Democrats over the last several decades, they recognize the fact that there was such a thing as an illegal settlement, and that was the position we held.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before, where the debate here in the U.S. is very stifled, but there's a healthy debate in Israel over this. In fact, I've got a clip from Haaretz, which is kind of a left-leaning Israeli newspaper. We can put this up. This is a pretty strong statement, how the Israeli army takes Palestinian land and hands it to settlers. This is not some extremist Palestinian thing. This is Haaretz. In the article, it's very interesting. It says, Israeli military seizes Palestinian land under the guise of security, and then it hands that and moves in Jewish settlers into that land. According to Haaretz, there have been 1,150 seizure orders issued by the military from 1969 to present. Millions of acres of Palestinian land have been stolen, Haaretz's words, on this and in other ways. So there is a land grab. They are taking the land. They're bulldozing the houses. They're bulldozing the olive trees. They're taking it, and now what we're doing is encouraging it with our policy. It seems like a pretty dumb thing to me.
The deaths are terrible, either side or both sides, whatever's going on. They're taking up land and not doing it in a proper manner. But for some reason, it still gets me, mainly because I sort of have an attraction to big trees and old trees and how old they are, and I like some of my favorite trees on my property. But this whole thing about bulldozing is almost just spite. To bulldoze, a tree that's a couple hundred years old.
At least,
I think it's even older than
sometimes
that.
1,000 years.
And these are olive trees. People make a living off that. It just seems like it's overkill, that they don't need to do that. And I just wonder, we have the Haaretz and other people around and other organizations that recognize this and complain about it, but they really don't get any coverage on this. And rarely do people get to hear an approach which is our approach, and that is non-intervention, rather than saying, okay, this side's right, this side's wrong, vice versa, you do it our way, and we're going to stand up for it, which is not our position. Our position is trying to get local people to make their own decisions, and but that is rarely heard. But there are a few out there, but I think when people hear that, and if they're just presented this problem, just an average person that knows nothing about what's going on, and you describe the situation, don't you think we should allow these people to work things out together, rather than having some outsider come in or some foreign or government come in and do this? To me, it's reasonable, but unfortunately, they don't get to hear that option.
And our interventionist policies create a kind of moral hazard, because the more extremist Israelis, believing that the U.S. military will back up anything they do, are more emboldened to be more aggressive, and thereby creating more animosity, more enemies. They don't have the incentive to find a way to compromise, So we actually create the problem with our intervention, whereas if we just backed away, stopped taking sides, things would be better off. Robert Fisk, who's reported probably more than anyone from the Middle East, he had a piece last year in The Independent, and it tells you the scope of the problem. He said, today, 600,000 Jewish Israelis live in about 140 colonies belonging to other people, the Palestinians. And that's a big deal, and it irritates people. People don't like losing their homes, believe it or not.
Well, the non-intervention position, of course, is something we have high regards for. But if you have non-intervention and you follow it, you don't have a foreign aid policy. You don't take money from poor people in this country and give it to rich governments and dictators in other countries and subsidize these people, just antagonizing the situation. And this could be used in this whole mess, even with the things going on in the court now over Trump. The impeachment process, because Ukraine, they said, well, he held it up, then he gave it to him. He shouldn't have held it up, and he should give it to him, but he didn't give it time. Well, what about, just forget about it. Yeah. Let the people put their money in their pocket and go and take care of their family.
Yeah.
But that's not even entertaining this.
That's extremist.
Here we are. It's the non-intervention. But this non-intervention means no foreign aid. I mean, a politician in Washington could get into trouble over that, because, our friends deserve it.
Yeah.
Well, who are our friends this month? And depends on who's passing it out. Which banking industry or which weapon are they going to build? And these different things. I remember the big argument over Colombia, which helicopter we were going to buy. So they bought both.
Buy them both. Why not?
So if we just didn't do that, we'd be so much better off, and we'd be a richer country, and we probably would have a lot less people needing to sleep in the streets, because it is connected.
And it's not just the billions we give to Israel every year. It is a larger amount, but we give plenty of money to the corrupt Palestinian Authority as well. We ship a lot of dollars over there. It subsidizes their corruption, keeps things mired in a mess. So it's on both sides we do it. Netanyahu is pretty straightforward. He says we want to take all that land. And so we're giving him the incentive to do it. It's not going to create peace. And I think a lot of Israelis understand that. And that's why the peace movement is so active there. The last thing we want to touch on, though, Dr. Paul, there's something that just came up after we'd already decided what to do.
Yeah.
This breaking thing. Sweden drops Julian Assange rape investigation. Deputy Chief Prosecutor Ava Marie Pearson said, after conducting a comprehensive assessment of what has emerged during the course of the preliminary investigation, I then make the assessment that the evidence is not strong enough to form the basis for filing an indictment,
Well, when I saw that, I crossed my fingers and I hope for the best, because, of course, we've been trying to introduce the notion of us not being involved, because I don't think any of that would have happened to Assange if the United States government hadn't promoted it. Even this stuff that Sweden did. The fact that Sweden's backing off now, I think is good. Maybe our position is softening, but that might be a lot of wishful thinking. But it could be. It's at least a news item that is worth talking about, and hopefully we will move in that direction, because it makes no sense. It's so pathetic what they're doing, and. If he dies in prison, who's the murderer?
Yeah.
That's the thing. The Swedes don't want to be the murderer. Will it be the British? I think he's under British control now. So should we blame the British, or should we blame our own government? But and he's not even an American citizen, Yet he's the Swedes are involved, the British are involved, and here we're doing all this punishment, and he could die over the whole thing. So, but we could also argue the case that Edward Snowden deserves a better treatment too. I thought of something the other day. They said, it's dangerous if you reveal the identity of a whistleblower. And I got to thinking, they're absolutely right. Look at what happened to Ed Snowden.
Yeah.
He was revealed, he came out, and he lost his country.
Yeah.
So it is dangerous if they're telling the truth. If you're telling a lie, all of a sudden they love you. Okay, you go up there and swear an oath and tell any lie you want, and we'll treat you well. So yes, if you're a true whistleblower, you're more liable to get into trouble than you would be praised.
That's true. And the thing about dropping this case, this is the whole basis upon which Assange got in trouble, is this rape thing. So with this gone, nothing else that happened after it is justified. So not that they'll change that. But another reminder, Dr. Paul's wonderful new mini book is going to be available as our gift to you for your support for the Ron Paul Liberty Report, the Ron Paul Institute. There are details in the description here on how you can make your donation. Your donation, tax deductible of $50 or more, will get you this booklet. $100 or more will get you a signed booklet. And we do want to sweeten the pot a little because we want everyone to be part of this. When we complete this little mini fundraiser, sending out this book, we're going to list everyone who qualifies for a booklet as one of our executive producers in an episode of the Ron Paul Liberty Report. So your name will scroll down as a thank you for supporting this program, for being a part of this program. You know, this is your program as well, and so we thank you for your continued support.
Very good. And I want to thank our viewers once again for tuning in today, and hopefully you can spread our message and get a few more people joining us. But today we tried to be as upbeat as we could, but there are serious problems, and obviously we know that. But we do resort to one philosophy, and that is non-invention, the protection of individual liberty, putting the responsibility on the individual and pledging not to commit violence against another, not initiating violence. And it's not complicated. And everybody gets something. Everybody gets their life back again. And they get to use their life as they please. They get to keep their own money. And they don't have to be told what to do and how to live and be susceptible to all the orneriness of government. So it's a beautiful philosophy. We've had bits and pieces of this throughout history, but it comes and goes. And quite frankly, I think we've been on the downswing for 100 years, although we had a nice boost, at the time of our revolution. Right now it's down, and it's at a precarious level. We don't know what's going to happen. If it gets half as bad as some people are predicting, it's going to be rough. And it could come, within this next year. It's very possible, before the election, something major is going to happen. So it is very, very serious. But then again, ideas have consequences, and they can't stop good ideas. I believe we have a good idea and a correct and a moral idea, and it's beneficial, and it is equivalent to what American exceptionalism should be, and that is the cause of liberty. So let's go with this and understand and realize that we can make a difference. That's what we intend to do. And I thank you very much for tuning in to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.